So hello, Design Only Sora here, and in this video I'm just going to quickly teach you how to get started with the Heroes mod loader. I do apologize for the microphone quality, but I don't have a better microphone at hand, especially. This video is going to be uncut just in case, just to make life a bit easier for everyone. So with that in mind, let's get started. First you're gonna get a package that looks like this. That's basically my SHC submissions for this year. You get a copy of the mod loader, the stock executable, and if you want, optional, a save game, which has pretty much everything unlocked. And to demonstrate with this, I am going to just to make sure I'm going to unpack the stock game. I always keep a clean backup of the game, just in case things go south. So this is the stock game, it's unmodified. I have it compressed. I'm gonna decompress it to the desktop just so I could prove it to you that it works in a stock game. To the desktop we go. And I'm gonna launch it. Actually no, I'm not gonna launch it because of SecuROM. Thanks DRM. I'm gonna move this. Wait, nope. I'm gonna bring this over and I'm gonna move Screwup and I'm gonna launch it. It should default to 1280 by 720. If we take a moment, because Heroes always takes a long time to start for the first time. The game is wide open, and it's kind of a bit stretched, but it's working. So to further go on, I'm gonna extract the mod loader. Right to the desktop we go. And the first thing you want to do, with the mod loader specifically, is that you want to run the configuration tool. The configuration tool will allow you to set up pretty much the mod loader for use with more or less any game. This is not a game-specific mod loader. It is dubbed the Heroes mod loader and it does make a lot of references on the Heroes specifically, but this mod loader functions with pretty much every game I've tested so far. It's something that I've built from the ground up to support more or less anything. Sonic Heroes is mainly first target. So yes, I know it's a bit of a crappy setup, I mean, but you only get to ever do this once. So yes, I want to make Sonic Heroes. And for the first dialogue, you want to point it to the executable of the game. So if you take a look at Sonic Heroes, that's where I've extracted my stuff. Sonic Win. And now I just list the root directory. Now, bear in mind, you don't necessarily want to hit the DVD root directory. You might be tempted, but the root directory is the very root directory of the game. You want to use a directory which has everything for the game on above it or under it, depends on your thinking methodology. So, in case of Sonic Heroes, it's just the same directory as executable, but in case of other games, it might be a bit different, where the executable could be in a subdirectory, and all the data could be in another directory. So we select Sonic Heroes, and we're basically done. We have the mod loader up. The executable is loaded. The mod loader, if the game is Sonic Heroes, it actually writes the resolution value to the executable. But apart from that, it doesn't touch the EXE or anything else in any other way. Oh well, and the border style. Border style of borderless is the default if you save. But here we have the mod loader, all running nice and dandy. About, mod loader, theming. These are the standard buttons. These standard button configs, they read buttons from your controller, but they're just the same as the config in the launcher of Sonic Heroes. So this modifies the standard button configuration that the game will actually accept. But if you want to actually have mods read from your buttons, then it's not implemented on a paired game basis where you actually read the buttons from the game. But what we have is it's your own. The mod loader has its own input stack, which allows you to basically make easily programmable inputs or hotkeys for any game. So with this in mind, I do know this menu is a bit messy, but I mean it will have to do for now. It allows you to set hotkeys for every single controller, which is quite nice. There's no analog stick emulation on the keyboard, so I can't really, well, if I type in, that's a nope. But there is button emulation for the controller, so I mean, the mods use mappings to a virtual Xbox controller, more or less, to actually simulate input for any mods that may want to utilize player input. So you can configure buttons: left stick, right stick, A, B, X, Y. And for the controller, it's also the same setup. For the axes, you want to press the button and then actually hold onto the axis. So after pressing this, I actually press my trigger rather than releasing it. Same with the other one. Top left, top right, L1, L2. I mean L1, R1. And for the stick, you want to press left and you want to press up. So now as you can see, the stick is moving. I'm slowly rotating it. Left stick, right stick, horizontal and vertical. A, B, X, Y. I'm using a PlayStation controller, by the way. I'm using back. And for the guide button, if you're using an emulated 360 pad, such as I am right here, then the guide button is most likely not going to be mapped. And I also discourage the use of it in mods, but in this case, because it takes the button 0 by default, which I should change to 255, it will actually share the same button as A, which might be undesirable in some cases. So you're just gonna press the button and wait for the timeout. It will just automatically assign a null value of 55. If this appears to have frozen, it's not frozen, it's just blocking the UI thread. That's a small programming gimmick that I'll need to fix. And you will also want to map the start button. And with this you should be fine. But there is one really important thing that I should like to point out. Oh, and by the way, the mod order is top to bottom, so the mods at the bottom get loaded last. And those take the most priority. But there is one thing that I should put in mind. And this is very, very important. In this SHC release, I've made a very small screw up, and that I've actually included a file that shouldn't be there. It was a test file. So what you'll need to do to actually get the SHC demo to run is go to Modloader Mods, hit Tweakbox, and inside Stage, and this, by the way, is the replacement of Seaside Hill. You want to either delete this folder, DVD root alt, as it gets generated when the game first runs, or delete the faulty file that I accidentally included while testing the collision struct and how to further modify collision in this game. So if you want to do it manually rather than just removing this, then you go to DVD root alt, and under collisions you want to remove SO1_IXX. If you don't remove it, you'll have a bad time in Seaside Hill, as you'll just die for seemingly no reason. I apologize for that, it's just a small screw up, it happens. If you want to run Heroes Tweakbox, just make sure to remove this file before the first time. Apologies for any judges or any other people that might actually get trouble because of this. And back we go. And I'm not gonna spoil my SHC entry, so I'm gonna uncheck this for now. But in order to prove that it actually works, I'm gonna run... let's run a stage mod, and let's run Mozzarino's aspect ratio support, which is just a re-implementation of the widescreen hack from Sonic Heroes Greatest Hits, with a minor tweak. And just to prove that it works, I will launch an exit. And what you see over there is the console. This is the console of the Heroes mod loader. It basically sends messages and receives them. Now, bear in mind, this console is also a server. And I didn't make any preventions for you from actually disabling the console. But if there's any mod that relies on the server and wants to send a message to the server, it will probably crash if it can't actually reach the server. Which is just a small thing I'll need to fix for the future. I mean, I plan to make the server an actual Windows service rather than a console application. But by default, it is not recommended that you actually close this window, at least for now. I do apologize for this. But as you can see, the widescreen hack is running. Previously, the game was stretching. And if we go to Seaside Hill... well, if we go to Seaside Hill, then... the game will have its texture successfully swapped. As you can see, it's a working texture hack. It's beautiful. You might have actually seen it on a few YouTube channels and places like that. I mean, it's been out for a while. It's my own hack, and well, it functions. But there are a few more nice quirks and touches that I should bring up. Most importantly, there is a controller priority, and Hero's Tweakbox is also a mod menu which reads controller inputs. But the catch is that if you have a controller and a keyboard, there's a good chance that the device you don't want to be the primary device will be the primary device, so i.e. it will take inputs from the keyboard rather than the controller you want, or vice versa. Now, the Hero's mod loader does support controller reordering, but there is one catch of it in that the GUI doesn't actually have the option to do it yet. I mean, well, I didn't really have the places. I didn't really have the actual time to do it. So we save and exit. If you go to mod loader config, every single device will have its name as the file and its GUID attached to it. If you open it up in a text editor, you'll find a controller ID section, which should be 0 for any default device you add. If you want to change device A to device B or reorder your controllers, then all you need to do is change the controller ID. So and these numbers are initially read and sorted. So if you set controller ID 1 and the controller ID 0, then well, 0 will be first and 1 will be second. But if you set controller ID 0 and controller ID, let's say 9999, 9999th controller, well, ID will still be second controller. Like, there's no force remap to third player, etc. And these are just the default values for buttons that you've seen in the GUI. I mean, nothing special. Use this Xbox notation. I prefer the PlayStation notation, but this is the notation more people will be familiar with, so I've stuck to it. Axes, the mod loader uses direct input for reading actual controller inputs, so in this regard, any direct input controller will be natively supported, such as any of your old pads. I mean, I did consider X input, but I thought direct input actually had more compatibility. So, but I mean, it still maps to the Xbox controllers, essentially, so that's not that big of a difference in terms of actual control. So if we exit out of here. Oh, did I save it? So if I wanted to, so I'll just put the ID to 1 if I want to make sure that my controller is the first device. And just to demonstrate this, I will use a mod that I wrote, and it's called the Input Stack Controller Overrider. What it does is that it takes the analog stick movements from the mod loader's input stack, so as you can see here, and transfers them to the game. So what I'm gonna do is, just to prove how my analog stick is working, actually, let's move this over. Over here I have the standard Windows controller input. I do apologize, there's no boundaries because of the Windows theme, or labels for that matter, but we do have the standard Windows controller input. And for the mod loader, I'm going to inverse them. So if we go on stick to the right and make this go down, what you should see now is that it's inverted. Nothing in the corners. And alright, we'll start the game. Actually, this will be a bad example because this doesn't read it. But right now I am pressing right and the menus are going left, and I'm pressing left and the menus are going right. Yeah, we'll cope with it. And Sonic Heroes is just accepting mouse input. I should patch that out at some point. So if we go into a stage now, I mean, it's not really gonna be much proof if you can't really see another controller reader in here, but I mean, this game doesn't accept controllers when it's not focused, but just as a demo, I'm gonna try to play this way for at least 10 or so seconds. So I'm currently holding on down, 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 down. And slowly but surely. Right now I'm rotating my stick clockwise, which is fine. Holding up, holding down, holding left, holding right. Actually, but if I set my stick back to what I expect, then on the right side, in the controller in Mod Loader Configurator, this is actually what I'm pressing, but the game is registering differently because of the profile I actually loaded, so that's a small little trick. Well, that's a small little aspect, but more importantly, I'm bringing this up because what you can actually do is for each separate mod, you can have different controller profiles. So if we go back to the mod loader directory, and I do apologize for this tutorial being long, it's just I thought I'd give it an more of an in-depth overview, but I am also recording this live. There's no post-editing, there's no hiding anything or anything of that sort. I'm just bringing a video out that's straight and immediate. But say we copy the controller config. Now, just to confirm, the analog stick is set correctly. So I'm going to inverse it for now, just quickly. Yep, it's inversed. Right, left, bottom, up. And one of the features of the mod loader is that you can actually set controls per mod. So if you copy the controller config, copy the controller config over to a mods directory. So where the main DLL is, the controller loader stack override. So in this case, I'm going to copy it to this mod. And currently the saved config is my inverse config, with my axes the wrong way around. And now, just as proof, I'm going to go back and fix my axes. So this is what my axes are. I'm gonna save and exit. And I'm gonna open this back up just to show that it's actually working fine. So here with the axes working fine, I'm gonna launch the mod loader. And I'm gonna go into a stage. And now if you look at the configuration utility where I reverse the axes back and the game, now my controller setting is the same as the configuration utility, but I've moved the config file into the mods folder. And as you can see, the game is reading reversed inputs for my left analog stick. So this is one little feature I packed in. Just allows you to set different configurations per mod essentially. I could see this being useful in providing remapping where the creators might not necessarily want to do it or know how to program it. But also for people where... Oh, thanks Humble Bundle. Also for people that are used maybe more to Japanese games where, for example, accept is circle and going back is X, and a mod is specifically written to support one of them. Well, you could just, you know, put your own config file there and just swap the buttons or so. So that's working. I mean, not much more to say. And that's for that. That's mostly it. I mean, there's not much more I could say. There's theming, nice theming. And specifically, you could save your themes. They will automatically load again. And what I should point out is that each mod has a potential config set up. If there is no config, it will show options in a more or less an inverse color of what your main accent is. So in this case, it's more or less an inverse of red. It's not really, but it's something I hacked up quickly. I should probably use proper hue changing. But if a mod does have a config, then you'll see a config button and you can hit it and it will just copy it in your default text editor, which I should probably change. Dead zone configuration for left stick, right stick, and the triggers. I disabled trigger support for this build, but I did make the triggers work for the camera, which is a pretty neat feature. So if I just go back to the overrider, I'm gonna remove it. And if I were to launch the game again, it would read the stick properly. Or both sticks for that matter. Oh, and hi Steam. So that's basically more or less it. Any other things worth mentioning? Apart from the Screwup where I accidentally placed a file in. I've made another Screwup for actually not providing a default theme config. So if you don't generate a theme config by hitting this button right here, doesn't matter if you have one or not, the mod will probably not run. And by probably I mean it'll crash in like first 1 second or two. And that's also another Screwup that somehow got past QA by 3 people, so yeah, that somehow got past 3 people. And I mean, that's all I could really say. Just one short, honest, not really short anymore, honest video. I mean, yeah. Look forward to the contest week. Have fun. So hello again, this is a short follow-up to the previous recording that I found after I reviewed the video, which was also my first ever voice video. I thought that I would maybe try to explain a few things, maybe more clear, more explicitly. I mean, that video just showing you how to set up the controller and a few quirks, but maybe more right to the point, I should mention a few things that I might have really glared over or missed. With regards to this Screwup specifically, what I've mentioned is that I've included a file which shouldn't have been there, which has accidentally leaked in through testing of collision reversing, and I've also forgot to include a theme file, which, well, it's not a problem for the configurator or for any mods, but for Hero's Tweakbox and Submission, there's a little Easter egg which makes use of this file, which is, well, that's no good. So more specifically, the theme file is just defines 3 colors. You could modify them. You don't have to stick with the colors given to you by the configurator. I mean, they're just something that I've introduced. But just to recap, what you want to do is just press when you first unpack the loader, and you want to set up the SHC submission in, which is Hero's Tweakbox. What you want to do is just save the config and theming menu. You don't need to change it or anything. Just press save on the GUI. That's no problem. And you need to delete the file, which, just to recap, is this file. Delete this. You'll find it in modloader mods tweakbox stage. You can also remove this entire directory. It doesn't matter. This directory gets auto-generated when you launch the mod. It doesn't make a difference. I thought I should just address this once again out of order. I mean, it's really important. Otherwise, it'll get your game into, well, not such favorable state. Also, regarding the EXE support of the game, because I didn't bring that up, I said stock executable. What I mean exactly is the stock DRM free executable. As you saw me change the executable at the beginning of the previous recording, I couldn't get the original game running because of SecuROM. Well, I could change it to servers, but that's not really the deal here. What you need to have is the stock Sonic Heroes executable. That's DRM free. Now there's 2 options actually for you to get this, and one option is just the cracked version. The cracked version is DRM free, that's fine, it has the same offsets. Or if you're in Europe, some of the European releases for PC have no DRM either, which is pretty much the same executable. The executable I have provided with the loader is just the stock executable with no differences, but it's default borderless and it's 720p. I thought I'd address that. And with that in mind, also another thing I should bring up is the mod loader has no dependencies on the game. As I've said, it's a universal mod loader, in which case, if I were to launch this executable, in fact I'll launch it right now, if I were to launch T-Sonic.exe, there's no mod running, it's completely stock. But if I open up the configurator, there are mods actually active, in which case, what I would like to say is that the way I actually work with mods is differently. For example, other mod loaders, such as the SADX mod loader, what you see is a DLL file that's actually loaded by the game is replaced with, you know, your own one, which then just takes control over, you know, whatever you want to do. Then, as part of the procedure, just loads the actual original DLL file that was meant to load. I think, now I don't do SADX, it's been forever since I've done SADX, but I think in SADX it's char models that's replaced, but that's more or less the case. And here, instead of actually having a dependency on a file from the game, the mod loader itself actually starts the game. It first does any file replacement that are necessary, then it starts the game, then all the mods are actually loaded through DLL injection and basically spawn on their separate threads when the game loads. So in this case, it really doesn't matter which game you're actually interacting with, as long as you compile your DLLs for the same architecture as the game you're running for is. So that's out of the way. One another important thing is that, well, as you might have saw at the beginning, you had to actually specify the location of the game, or you set up the mod loader. And if you change the location of the game, such as if I change the file name, if I change the folder name, the mod loader wouldn't run, it will crash. Oh, and here you can see some beautiful C# acceptance, yeah? And if you want to reset the directories, you can either do it through the text files. There's a text file for the root directory, and there's a file for, where is it? Executable path, which does the job. But if you want to do it with the Windows again, then if you remove setup complete, the configurator will give you, well, one more chance to actually set up the configuration. So I could go back to Sonic Heroes, select the Sonic Win, and this window for some reason is at the back. I select Sonic Heroes, DVD root, and this, by the way, resets all of the configuration, so the enabled mods as well. That's nuked, so you need to set up any enabled mods again. Yeah, that does it. And with regarding to the local server, what I mentioned is that the mod loader runs on also runs a server. This server is hosted on localhost. There's no access to it from the internet at all. If you were to look at the source of the mod loader, you will see it's just pretty much the equivalent of 17001. It's just loop back, it just loops back. And with that matter, what should be important to note is that the mod loader server actually runs on a port. It runs on port 13370 on your local machine, which could give you problems if there is another process running on port 13370. In this case, the mod loader will actually throw an exception and not allow you to launch. So please just make sure not to hijack that port. I should probably give an option to change the port in the future, but for now, please just use the other port. I mean, I could demonstrate this by just launching the mod loader. Sonic Heroes always takes forever to load for the first time. It always does. For some reason, the first time it always takes forever to load. And if I try to launch it again, well, you get an exception. More networking. Yeah, you can only use one socket address once, so that is one issue you might come up with. It's no big deal. It's something that I'll implement somewhere at some point in the future. So with that out of the way, there is another thing that's worth mentioning, and that's if you want to record the game. More specifically, if I enable a mod or two, for instance, any mod that might actually support an overlay over the game or draw on top of the game, it actually uses an invisible window on which you draw with DirectX upon, because for now I decided to try to make a universal implementation. So if I were to, for example, mess around with an OpenGL game, DirectX 8, DirectX 9, I would need to make separate implementations for each of these. But if I go this way, well, with a fake window, then I could draw over anything, at least for now. provided that you're not actually rendering the game in exclusive full screen. And just to demonstrate, and one important thing you must do is for the SHC submission, you must actually turn off full screen mode for the game. And if you want to go full screen, just type in your screen resolution and go borderless. That will be identical to full screen in terms of experience. But just to demonstrate, I will do the bootloader D2D sample, which is quite outdated. It's actually on GitHub. You can actually view the sample on GitHub, but it's quite outdated. I've cleaned up a bit of the code for it, etc, etc. But if you launch a game with this, and if you go into a stage, now let me just change the volume a bit. If you go into a stage, you will notice that this sample, in fact I've already made a recording of a sample, shows your positions on the bottom of the screen. But what's really happening is that there's a window on top of your existing window. You can see it right here. It draws over basically everything. You could say it's a hacky implementation, but it works with literally pretty much anything, and with the approach that I took of making a universal mod loader, I thought that this would be necessary. I mean, you can draw over anything rendered in any API as long as it's borderless, as long as it's not exclusive full screen. So yeah, that's a little thing. And just to further proof, you can close the window. There, no overlay. Done. And this brings up one other topic, because if you want to record the game, what you'll need to do is that you can't really use window captures. Window capture actually captures the content of the game, but it will actually, well, it depends on the implementation. If the window capture is taking the coordinates of the actual window, when just cropping the display capture. But what you will need to do, and that's a bit unfortunate, but if you really want to record the game, with any overlay that it has, then you actually need to do display capture and crop it to the game. Or if you're running, borderless full screen, then that's just fine. Just capture the whole display. That's no big deal. And there's one final part, which is using D2D mods in other games. These overlays in other games. For now, the mod loader just matches the window it should draw on by the title of the window. More specifically, it has this little file in mod loader config called window name, and it's literally the title of the window. As we bring it over, it's Sonic Heroes. Yeah, that should do it. So let's try messing around with this a bit. This is how I implemented it now. This implementation might change in the future, but for now, this is how it does work. I mean, that's how I implemented it. And it matches title by approximation, if I recall. So, I mean, it's been forever since I implemented this, but it matches title by approximation. So if I change it to the title of Notepad++, then run the game, and go into a level, then this sample should hopefully... Oh, it doesn't. Oh, my bad. This sample wouldn't, because I hard-coded the executable name of Sonic Heroes, but... That's my bad. But any other thing past this sample would actually render on a Notepad window. So, just to make this explicitly clear, what you have basically is you can take a look at Sonic Heroes, which is the main library that I wrote for basically the mod loader and the mod loader mods. But you can take a look at Sonic Heroes, and what you'll find is that there's just a huge abstraction, and this abstraction also figured out the window name for the game. And I mean, that's about it. That's all there is to it. I apologize that I just screwed up with this, but and the other mod would display it over Notepad in that case. I mean, it's just the implementation that I've changed, and I didn't I thought I recompiled it just now, but I didn't recompile it just now, and you know, I am making these recordings live, so any screw-ups I make are just there forever. My own choice. I mean, I like to be completely straight with everybody. So that's the follow-up done, at least, I hope. I hope you look forward to getting this. I mean, that's all I could say. Have fun!